Hello there, all my lovely jewelry makers. I'm Christina of CSLdesigns, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this goddess braid wirework bracelet. Now this is actually a really simple technique. It just ends up looking more intricate because of how we add the beads in. Now if you like any of the ones that I made here, they will be available for sale in my shop along with other jewelry kits and tutorials. The link will be available in the description box below the video, and while you're there you can also sign up to my newsletter. Otherwise, if you want to learn how you can make one for yourself, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to need. First of all, the wire that I'm using is a regular round copper wire, and this is a 0.8mm gauge. And then we need some beads. Now these are 3mm rounds, and the ones I'm using are faceted silver coated hematite gemstone rounds. But of course you can use whatever beads you prefer. Just make sure the holes are large enough to take the wire through. Then I'm using these ribbon ends to finish off the ends of the bracelet, and they have these little loops in them where we can attach our findings. So I'm using a lotto claw clasp, an extended chain, and a few drop rings to put it together. Of course you can use whatever kind of clasp you prefer. And along with the ribbon ends, I'm also using this E6000 glue. It's going to give a nice strong bond. As for the tools, we of course need some flush cutters so we can actually cut our wire. I've got tweezer nose and chain nose pliers if we need to manipulate the wire, and also for the jump rings. And finally, I'm using a spring clamp to help hold the wires in place while we're braiding. So everything will be linked in the description box below the video. Otherwise, let's get it all ready and let's get started. Then we need to cut some lengths of our wire, and what I have here is 9 lengths of about 30 centimeters each, and just make sure they don't have any kinks or bends in them. What I've also done is I made sure all the ends are even and then put them through my spring clamp and just leave a couple of centimeters there for the tails. Then this is now where we're going to start braiding from. So the first thing I'm going to do is just separate my wires out a bit. Now we're going to be doing a regular 3-strand braid, but each length is going to have 3 lengths of wire in it that are working as one. So I'm just going to separate them out into 3 groups with 3 wires in each, just like this. To start off the braid, I'm going to just take my right group, doesn't matter what side you start from, but I'm just starting on the right here, just pushing down the middle a little bit so you can see it comes backwards a bit from the others. Then I take the right one over that middle one, and that becomes the new middle one. And then I bring that previous middle one a bit further out to the side. Then I like to push down the one that I just brought into the middle a little bit so we can bring the furthest left one over that and into the middle. And having pushed that down a bit makes it so the braid becomes a bit tighter, and make sure that the wires within the groups are laying flat next to each other here the whole time. So now I have 2 groups again on the right side. That means I'm going to make the next movement from the right, so just push that middle one down a bit, then bring the outer one over that into the middle. You can see you get a nice and tight braid even though it's wire, and then just straighten it back out. And again, I'm just pushing that middle one down before I then bring over the furthest left one. And as you can see, I'm just doing a few stitches in the braid here without adding any beads in. I like to do that just to kind of get going with the rhythm of the braid, but also so we have an end of the braid without beads, so we can use that to finish it off with. And now that's the new middle one. As you can see, it's literally a regular 3-strand braid, just with 3 wires in each group that we're using at the same time. So I've got a few stitches now. What I'm going to do is start to add in the beads. So the next group that I'm due to use is this furthest right one, because this side has got 2 groups. So before I move the wires, what I'm going to do is just separate out the very outer one from the others, because it's that length that I need to add a bead onto. So I'm letting it drop all the way down there, and then just push it as far up as it'll go. And then I'm just going to bring the wires back together and basically do the next movement in the braid. So I'm just going to push down that middle one before I then take these 3 lengths from the outer group that I just added the bead to one of them, make sure they're still together, and kind of bring that wire with the bead back in with the others, and now bring them over that middle one and in to become the new middle one. And then you can see that bead is just going to be trapped right there on the outside edge. I'm just kind of separating the wires a little bit, but it's just adding the extra sparkle and color. And then this is the new middle one, so I'm just pushing that down before I then separate out the outer length on the furthest left group, adding a bead, letting it drop down, make sure it pushes all the way up so it won't go any further. Bring the wires back together, and then make sure I bring them over that middle group to become the new middle group. And then you can see that bead now sits on the opposite edge of the previous one, and then just bring everything back together, flatten it out, and you basically just continue like this. So push down that middle group a bit, add a bead to the outer wire in that outer group that we're due to move next, before then bringing them back together and bringing them over and into the middle. And then that bead sits there again on the outer edge. And this is basically how you want to continue. So we're now adding a bead with every movement, just on that very outer wire on either side in whatever group is there, and just try and get the braid as tight as possible, which is why we're pushing down the groups a bit before we do our movements, because obviously wire here reacts a bit differently than if it was cord or fiber of some sort. So we're just helping the wire get into position, and you just continue like this until you have the length that you need, of course minus the clasp that you're going to add. So now I got the length that I need here. Then on the other end I'm just going to do an extra stitch or two, again without beads, just like where we started out. So just bringing the group over and into the middle, straighten it back out, and then this is now ready for us to finish off the ends. So what we want to do is straighten these lengths back out, so they're going to come straight out from the end instead of going out towards the sides here. So I'm just going to kind of grab onto where I want my bend to be and just do one group at a time. So I'm grabbing onto it and then basically straighten it out like that. So this is just the middle one. Then I'm going to take the one on the side here and also straighten it out and have it come up next to the other group, so all the wires are laying flat next to each other in those two groups. And with the final one, also bring that straight up, and again that's laying flat next to all the others as well, because we don't want to have too much bulk with these wires because it won't really fit inside the ribbon end then. So just something a bit like this. And then obviously we now need to get rid of the excess lengths of the wire here. So what I personally like to do is take my ribbon end and just place it where it's going to end up sitting, so that gives me a good idea to know where I need to cut the lengths down. So obviously they need to fit inside the ribbon end. So what I'm going to do is actually go to the middle group first of all and cut those lengths off. And then what I'm going to do is go to the group on one side here, and I want to cut those off as well, except the outer one. So the two inner lengths, I'm just going to use the ones I just cut to kind of gauge where I need to cut these. So I just like to put the back of my pliers up against the previous cuts, cut off those. We left that outer one, and then just repeat with the two inner ones on the other side. Make sure to leave that outer one, because what I'm then going to do is take my Tweezernose pliers, and right where the cuts are I'm going to grab onto the outer wire and bend it over to the opposite side, so just straight across, so it basically lays on top of the ends of the other wires that we cut off. And then the same with the one on the other side, so just bend that in the opposite direction. So they're basically laying on top of each other there on the end. Then I'm just going to get my flush cutters again and just cut one at a time, but in the middle, and the other one, so that when we cut them, the two ends basically meet up there in the middle, kind of like that. Now obviously it doesn't have to be perfect, but just so we don't have too much bulk, I don't want them overlapping. And now I'm ready to bring my ribbon end in, put this over the end. Now of course we just need a glue for this as well, and I'm just going to be using a toothpick to apply my glue with. So just get a little bit on there, then grab a ribbon end and get it inside of it, and just cover the inside walls there. So you don't need to fill it up, because obviously we still need to put the wire in there, so it's just going to come spilling out with the excess. But just make sure you cover the inside walls. And then what I have left on my toothpick, I like to just put on the end of the bracelet itself, and just make sure to get it in between the nooks and crannies of the wire there, because that way when we put the two together and the glue dries, it's going to really adhere nicely. And then just put the ribbon end on the end of the wire there, then grab your chain nose pliers and start to push it closed. So I like to put a finger on either side to keep it in place, and then do it gradually. So just do it a bit from side to side, and when it's pretty much all the way tight and I just have to do my final squeeze, I just like to double check that it's in the middle, and if I'm happy with that, I just give it my final push to really get the ribbon end's teeth there to grab onto the wire. And also I just go in from the side to make sure to close those up, and then just let that dry. You have your loop here where you can attach your findings, and of course you just need to repeat the same on the other end as well. So now I've attached my clasp and extender chain, then we just need to shape the bracelet so we can wear it. So you can either shape this around something that has a size and shape like a bracelet mandrel, or you can just use your hands and fingers by going in and start putting a curve into it. So just go back and forth and gently add more and more of a curve until we end up with the two ends closer together, so we can of course use the clasp. Now I personally prefer my bracelets to have more of an oval shape rather than a round shape. I feel like that sits better on the wrist, but you just want to keep shaping it until you're happy with it, and then your bracelet will be finished and ready to wear. So I really hope you enjoyed the tutorial for this Goddess Braid wirework bracelet. Now if you want to see more wirework braiding designs, I have loads of them on my channel. In fact, I have a whole playlist full of them, and I'll of course leave that in the description box down below. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.